Hey, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Lakers for Friday. Brian Kamenetsky and Andy Kamenetsky. Andy, the assumption has always been that the Nets, once they got rid of Kevin Durant and moved on to Kyrie Irving, as long as the Lakers offered that second first-round pick, they'd be willing to swing a trade that included Russell Westbrook. But what if that's not actually true? That's next on Locked On Lakers.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, sometimes on weekends, but no matter how you get your podcasts or where, always fresh Lakers content for you, never buried behind a paywall. You don't have to pay for this podcast. Something else.
You should, but you don't have to.
But you don't have to. It's our gift to you. Speaking of gifts, Andy,
we are getting paid for it, though, just so people understand. It's not truly altruistic. They do give us money.
And by the way,
you just don't have to give us money.
Right. And wouldn't be doing this for free. I mean, I enjoy podcasting, but no, I'm not.
We are getting money. In case
I'm not doing a show every single day for free. We're not doing that. Anyway, but speaking of gifts, August 27th, 11 a.m. That's a Saturday, 170 South La Brea. Andy and I will be at the Doer store doing a live taping of the show. It's a mailbag episode. Everybody who shows up into the store has a chance to participate in the show. You have a chance to win some prizes while you're there. Some of the most comfortable clothing that you will ever see, touch, or try on. But we know not everybody can get there, Andy. And so we've been mentioning, if you send in a question that is good enough to get on the show, you have a chance to win a Doer prize pack. And we weren't kidding. So Andy has the Locked On Network hat right there. If you're watching on the Locked On Lakers YouTube channel, you can see it. He's going to drop in all of the usernames of people who have submitted questions worthy of getting themselves into the show. He is going to pull out a name from that hat, and the winner, that user, that name that we pull out, you get a pair of performance denim and an only tee, as they call it at Doer. This is a $168 value. Andy, who is winning our first Doer prize pack leading into our big show on the 27th?
Martin Hall.
Martin Hall
is winning one of these prize packs. Martin Hall has been very active on the YouTube channel. He's submitted, by the way, this is a nice cheat code. Martin Hall has submitted several questions, all of which are good, which up his odds of actually getting his name pulled, like we just saw.
So there you go. Martin's question will be featured on the show, obviously. And Martin, DM us at Cam Brothers. That's the easiest way to do it. Or you can find us through the YouTube channel. But whatever. Martin, you find us, and we will make sure that you get your prize from Doer. So much to cover today.
You can also
Andy.
email us at KamenetskyBrothers@gmail.com.
Right, but no fake Martin Halls.
Well, that's part of the reason I wanted to email, is because might be a little easier to identify.
Yeah, we'll see. No scammers. We got our antenna up for you people. A lot of stuff we want to get to. We want to get to the Pau Gasol news. He will be he will have his number put up in the rafters in the springtime for the Lakers this year, and eventually will be in the Hall of Fame. Something goes a little out of the typical order for the Lakers, Andy, and I think there are a lot of good reasons that they're doing it that way. But we have to start here. What if the Lakers can't actually throw in a second first round pick and actually get Kyrie Irving? That has been the assumption, but we've seen this week a lot of reporting saying that the Nets may not be interested in that. That if they are going to trade Kyrie, they want ready-made players. They don't want to rebuild. They want guys who can help them win right away. Seen implications of that from Mark Stein on his Substack, from Woj on ESPN.
Christian Winfield, who covers the Nets, I believe for Nets Daily, has written about that, or the New York Daily News. I don't remember which, but he's very plugged in with the team.
So I got to be honest with you. This really would be a fly in the ointment because we've just assumed that this is the thing that, if it gets to that point, the Lakers, if they were willing to make that, put that second pick in there, could get Kyrie Irving. If they can't, that radically changes the Russell Westbrook trade landscape, to say the very least.
Well, I mean, not to speak for you, but I got to say, I have not assumed that this would automatically be the case. I think there's been a wide assumption that if the Lakers were willing to throw in both of those picks, they would get Kyrie. I think what's been conflated is that is the baseline cost if they want to get Kyrie. Like, it's going to cost those first 2-round picks. But I've never assumed that the Nets would automatically be doing that, in part because I've never assumed that the Nets, whether they trade Kevin Durant or particularly if they don't trade Kevin Durant, are automatically going to be looking to trade Kyrie. And for example, if you consider the rumored deal with the Celtics that they might be interested in trading for Durant, and if they do that, it's going to be with Jaylen Brown as the centerpiece for Brooklyn. You know, Marcus Smart might be involved. He's been a bit of a sticking point.
It would be a haul, at least based on what the Nets are asking for.
Right. Maybe like Grant Williams, Derek White, someone like that. Like Jaylen Brown and a couple quality rotation players at least, plus those other picks for Kevin Durant. And if the Nets make a deal like that, they're still really competitive with the rest of that roster. So that could mean, A, they're less inclined to trade Kyrie Irving to begin with. And there have been multiple reports that Kyrie has been signaling to the team, I am committed for this season. The Nets have actually on their social been saying good things about Kyrie. But if nothing else, it changes the landscape of what they would want for Kyrie if they trade him. Like that, again, that team theoretically can be competitive. So they're not going to be looking to take back, picks that help them 4-6 years down the road. And Russell Westbrook bought out. Like, unless the Lakers can get really creative with this, which is going to be extremely difficult. They really may not be as far into the Kyrie Irving sweepstakes as there's just been this wide.
And it depends. No question. There probably is a lot of posturing going on here, because the Nets, in order to, if they decide that they do need to trade or want to trade Kyrie, in order to get a better return, need to drum up a little bit more business. Now, that said, part of the reason that there isn't more attention, I think, on Kyrie is because, for the same reason that the Lakers aren't swooping in to make a big deal on Indiana. So the Nets aren't moving Kyrie yet. So there's no point in another team coming out and, showing interest, dangling players, putting something out there that they might do, because there's no market for Kyrie yet. Once Kyrie Irving is actually available, maybe the Lakers will still be the only team willing to give up, a premium to get him, but maybe not. And so I think Brooklyn is certainly counting on that and is obviously interested in drumming up a better market. But I do think it's like, what we've talked about a lot is the idea that Brooklyn may not be in a rebuild and may not want to make a rebuilding trade. But what I take some of this to mean too is they may not want Westbrook, or they might want a higher price, or they might want actual human players that are young or whatever, even if they are rebuilding. That a package led by a bought out Westbrook and 2 long in the future first round picks, regardless of what they do with Durant, may not be enough to get Kyrie, or may not be a package that they are interested in. That is a little bit different to me than the scenarios that we've been talking about a lot, which is the one I think that you outlined there and I are 100% correct about. And so what I want to ask you next is, what happens if that's the case? Because obviously that Kyrie is the clear target for Rob Pelinka and for LeBron and for the Lakers. If he's not actually available, what do you do? I'll ask that question next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Doer, the sponsors of the Locked On Lakers podcast, and they are the purveyors of the world's most comfortable pants. You will not believe just how freaking comfortable their pants, their shorts, their shirts, everything they make is truly, truly lovely to be wearing. And off the top, letting you know, Locked On 15. That's how you get 15% off your purchase. We love being involved with Doer because this is the most versatile clothes you will ever find. They've got comfort, they've got style, function, all complementing each other. So you can wear just a pair of Doer pants everywhere you're going to be going over the course of the day, whether it's work, whether it's out with friends. You could actually ride a bike to meet your friends or go to work or both, whatever. Either way, these pants work for everything. They're made with ultralight tensile, moisture wicking, antibacterial, 95% natural fibers, meaning they're actually good for the earth. There is nothing whatsoever to criticize about Doer. So go to 170 South La Brea if you're in LA. That's where the store is. It's in Mid-City. Or if you're not in the area, but you want to get your hands on some of these clothes, go to shopdoer.com. Either way, again, use our exclusive code for our listeners. You guys, our family, 15% off at Locked On 15. Again, Locked On 15, 15% off at Doer.
Locked On Lakers also brought to you by betonline.net. It is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, combat sports, esports, even golf. And we are so close, Andy, to getting to that part of the year where all of these things are happening at the same time. And it's bonkers. You need all the news. You need all the information so you can get out there and bet. And BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of that sports wagering information that you need, whether it's live in-game betting, sports, and podcasts. They've got you covered. So head over to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action. And BetOnline, it's where the game starts. So, Andy, the Lakers really could be in a bit of a pickle here. They have a decision to make. If the Nets really, it's not just a question of they're not trading Kyrie Irving. They're not trading Kyrie Irving for the things that you can give them. So let's just say hypothetically, and look, maybe they can wrap in a third team. There's always a way. But the Lakers have very limited resources, and there is a limit as to how much they can, like literally how much they can put into a deal to make this happen. What do you do? Do you jump on a trade for Buddy Hield and Miles Turner that might still cost you those same two first-round picks? Maybe add a little more protection to them. Maybe the terms might be a little bit better, but you probably ultimately have to surrender both of them. Do you make a Utah trade of some sort and try to hold on to a pick?
That's another one you may be waiting on.
Yeah. Or do you just wait? And see how the season develops, understanding that the roster that you have isn't good enough. I think everybody understands that. Hope you can tread water long enough and that an opportunity to use those picks and anything else you get your hands on comes on later in the year. What do you do?
I think whatever you do, you got to be thinking about this from a place of practical thinking as opposed to desperation. And that's one of the advantages of LeBron signing the extension, which was officially announced on Thursday. The Lakers sent out the press announcement. So we know he's actually signed this contract. Like, to whatever degree you were concerned at all that LeBron was holding this extension over the Lakers, in an effort to try to make them get something done. And clearly not that much because he signed the thing less than 2 weeks after it was eligible. The Lakers no longer have to worry about doing something to dazzle LeBron and just doing something for the sake of doing it, which can lead to very poor results. I mean, LeBron spent many years in Cleveland during that first stint where they were bending over backwards, just bringing in whoever they could in an effort to make LeBron happy with the direction, the organization feel committed towards, and it never got them anywhere close to where they needed to be. So they also now they're in this position where if they have to hang on to their assets in order to try to put themselves in a better position moving forward, they can do that with the security of knowing the guy they're trying to impress the most isn't about to bolt. I mean, honestly, I think LeBron has to have a pretty good idea of where things stand with Kyrie, not just from where the organization's telling him, the Lakers, but he's in contact with Kyrie. I'm sure he's hearing from Kyrie, where the Nets' heads are on all of this. And the idea that, no, really, they're not going to trade me, man. however much Kyrie wants or doesn't.
Or they're just
want
like,
to be
they're not going to trade.
right
now. You can't make them trade for some. And again, like this is that
LeBron wants this really badly does not matter a rat's ass to the Nets. They don't.
The Nets don't care about that. And I think that the big decision they have to make is pull the trigger on something that you're not quite sure about, or wait. Like, do you risk going into the season with a roster that you know isn't good enough, but you hope you can improve in a way that's better than what you think a Hield, and this again, Hield and Turner is the sort of the baseline of the only other deal that we know about. The Lakers, Rob Pelinka supposedly working the phones, but like there is a limit as to what you can get. There's, only certain teams would be willing to take Westbrook. Only certain teams can take Westbrook. And you have to make that decision. This is what we've been talking about for a lot of the summer. How good are we? Do you think that Buddy Hield and Miles Turner make you a championship contender? Because as much as I know, there are a lot of people who detest the idea of entering the season with Russell Westbrook on the roster and look at this team, as you and I have, and said, it's not good enough. I think it can be better. And, there are a lot of things about it. There are things that can happen to make this team, I think, better than they currently are on paper, better than the expectations might be. But I think you got to be drinking an awful lot of Kool-Aid to think that better can mean as good as Golden State, as good as Denver, as good as, the top teams in the West. But you can only make the trade one time. And, if you make it early and you don't get where you want to be, you're done. That's it. That's all you got.
So let's take it a step further down. Maybe you don't think a Buddy Hield, Miles Turner trade makes you as good as Golden State or Denver or the Clippers if fully healthy. Do Hield and Turner make you good enough that with a few breaks coming your way, you could actually come out of the West? If you get maybe a little luckier than average in the playoffs, would you be, a couple of those teams ahead of you have injuries, chemistry issues, whatever? Do those guys make you good?
Let's be honest. Getting Kyrie doesn't necessarily, I think, vault them ahead of a team like Denver or Golden State or whatever. They still got a lot of. The other thing that's interesting about this that I probably should have mentioned in the last segment is, what do you do if, because I've seen this reported as well, that the Nets really aren't necessarily interested in putting somebody like Joe Harrison or Seth Curry, and again, a lot of this is built around the same level of posturing of, just because we're making these trades does not mean we're automatically trying to blow it up and rebuild. You're signaling to your fans that we're still taking the season seriously. Come out and buy season tickets, all of it. But let's just take it at face value for the sake of the discussion. It becomes a very different trade if the Lakers have to give up the 2 picks and whatever to only get one player back. Like, that makes a significant difference if the Nets want to hold on to their other useful players. And so that changes the trade calculus here, because I think earlier in the summer, the assumption was, geez, the Lakers might have to take on salary as a burden, as the cost of doing business. You and I, of course, are like, that's not the cost of doing business. That should be the business. Set that aside. All of this stuff becomes fascinating in terms of the decision-making if some of the assumptions that we've been making all summer long, we and the rest of the NBA universe, don't actually turn out to be true.
I mean, Talen Horton-Tucker, for example, if he does not have a particularly good season, he's going to opt into that final year of his contract, $10 or $11 million. And if the Lakers want to move him to create more cap space, I mean, my God, you want to talk about just a disastrous decision over the last couple of years.
Oh my! I had honestly never even thought about that. Like, what happened? I mean, we're so deep in the adding an asset to get off of the Russ contract that I like the idea that next year they might be in a position where they had to add some sort of sweetener, even if it's just a second rounder, to trade Talen Horton-Tucker. That is a terrible look, and shame on you for even bringing it up.
If you're looking to move his $11 million off the roster, you might have to attach an asset to that, which beyond the whole like, oh my God, how did we get here factor? You have to start thinking about, will we have assets? Like, will we actually have assets to do this? All of which is to say, you have to be thinking about the full picture when you decide to put in both of your picks, if it's only going to make you marginally better. Like, it's one thing to do it for Kyrie, just because Kyrie at least has, at his absolute best, superstar upside, and superstars are hard to come by. But Buddy Hield, Miles Turner, they will make the Lakers better. And I think Miles Turner, Anthony Davis could be a really good 4-5 combo.
And Turner's young enough that you could sign him if he's healthy. He's got health concerns, but he certainly fits a timeline for a team, that doesn't want to be hyper old.
But unless you feel like, okay, this really elevates us into the mix, you have to really think hard about, is it worth it? Like, the Lakers always want to project championship aspirations, but you don't want to be cosplaying it. Like, it doesn't do you any good to go all in to project what you want to be if you're not actually that team.
So this is, I found this stuff, this sort of developments over the course of the week, to be kind of a fun wrinkle in the conversation about this. We don't necessarily know more than we did before, because who knows how much of this is real, how much isn't, and all of it could change once trades actually begin happening. But man, it is a fun change in the discourse, which I welcome. Let's do this next, Andy, because my favorite part about the schedule release really didn't have anything to do with the games. It was the news that on March 7th of next season, or this season, I should say, the Lakers will be raising Pau Gasol's number 16 to the rafters. They will retire his number. It's at home against Memphis. You and I are as big of Pau Gasol fans as you're going to find, which is saying something, because there are a lot of us out there. So let's talk about this honor next. Okay, so the thing that makes, I guess I've seen a little bit of chatter, like, are we sure Pau Gasol is going to be in the Hall? Yes, folks. Yes. Pau Gasol is going to the Hall of Fame. He's going to go to the Hall of Fame on his first year of eligibility. I think it's like 3 players in the league history with 20,000 points and 10,000 rebounds. He's got 2 rings. He's got all the international accomplishments. Pau Gasol is going to the Pro Basketball Hall of Fame, or the Basketball Hall of Fame, I should say. It does, though, Andy, kind of take Lakers tradition, which says you have to be inducted first, and turn it around a little bit, because he won't be in the Hall of Fame when the Lakers raise the banner. Are you okay with that?
Raise the jersey.
Raise the jersey, right? The jersey banner, or whatever it is. Are you okay with
Hopefully
that?
They're raising the banner, though.
On March 7th, that would be premature. I think they should. I think teams should do that. If you know you're not going to win, just raise a banner.
Just declare yourself champs.
That's it. We win.
Prove or not.
But are you okay with them?
I don't accept the premise that we haven't played this season. I don't accept
or that we won't win.
Yeah.
Are you cool with them kind of breaking protocol here to honor Pau in this way?
100%. Because like you said, it is a given that he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. Like, this is a no-brainer. He's obviously going to be in there. B, what he meant to the Lakers. But C, I mean, as we learned with Kobe, you never know. If you take for granted that you can wait a little bit because that person will be around. Mm-hmm. And, Kobe entered the Hall posthumously. And, who would have ever thought, at the time, that Kobe Bryant, I mean, they raised his jersey to the rafters because, if you think Pau was a no-brainer for the Hall.
I think we were all fairly confident Kobe was going to get elected.
So they broke that protocol for Kobe because A, he's Kobe. B, of course, he's going into the Hall of Fame. Like, he could enter his own special wing of the Hall of Fame, like the champagne room. He would have been eligible for it. But the assumption was always like Kobe's going to be there to get inducted into the Hall of Fame, and he'll be inducted by a contemporary that he admired, or Phil Jackson, or Shaq, or whoever. And that's obviously not what happened. And I think it's great to see the Lakers recognize we're going to uphold our standards, but we're also going to live in the real world that's not predictable.
And it's, what is the purpose of waiting? That would be my question. It's like, again, it'd be different if
like you got to wait on a guy like Michael Cooper, for example, because it's not a given he's going to make it in.
Right. It's for free. Yeah, fringy makes it devalue, but like for guys you're not sure about, for players, or players who maybe are Hall of Famers, but you have to consider their contribution as Lakers. I can't make a case, certainly can't make a case he's not going to the Hall of Fame. And I can't make a case that he doesn't belong as a retired number for the Lakers. He was the second best player. It's a Hall of Fame caliber player, the second best player on one of the most important eras, since the 1980s for the Lakers, one of their 3 championship eras that they've had. And so he certainly meets the standard. And I think even, you mentioned Kobe, and I was thinking exactly the same thing. Like, don't wait. There's no point in waiting. But also, too, Pau has become kind of an interesting connection to Kobe and to those teams for the organization. I mean, I know he is, Jeannie is, and they're extraordinarily close with Pau. Pau has taken on, I don't want to, a father role is too much.
The greatest uncle in the world.
Correct. Deeply involved with, Kobe's family and his children. And moreover, the world needs to honor and recognize people of the caliber of Pau Gasol.
The caliber of person, you mean?
Yes. I didn't say player. I said person. And if he's going to the Hall of Fame, and he deserves it, and he deserves it within your organization, and to boot, you're talking about one of the finest human beings to move through the organization. I am really glad they're not standing on sort of the arrogance of the standard, like you put it, and they're taking care of it. And I have not bothered putting in credentials for games for a while, like sort of since COVID, not to peel back the curtain too far, because nobody cares, but like we tape the show right after games go on, and we can't really do it from the arena. It slows down putting up the show for you guys, all that stuff. So there's really no reason for us to be there. Access is different. We can't get in the locker room anyway because of COVID, blah, blah, blah. I'm real tempted on March 7th to be in the building. I can somehow figure it out. If they'll remember who we are and let us back in.
They will. And in all likelihood, I will be there as well. Like you mentioned, Brian, you can't say enough about Pau as a person. I mean, just his generosity and his thoughtfulness and his intellect. I mean, he was on track to go to med school before really moving seriously into basketball. And it's fitting that does a lot of charity work, but the one that I'm most aware of is the work that he does with St. Jude's. And it's fitting that somebody that was going to move into medicine is so heavily involved, still in the medical industry and with hospitals and that. You and I have actually been to St. Jude's when he's been honored, and, they think the world of him there. And, Pau was the absolute perfect running mate for Kobe. Like Kobe and Shaq were more dominant, and Shaq was a better player than Pau. But Pau was more perfect for Kobe, like in every sense, matching skill sets, temperament, basketball IQ, everything. The other thing too, Brian, we've talked a lot about Kobe in this segment because Kobe and Pau are so intertwined. When this news happened, because it's an acknowledgement that Pau is going to go into the Hall of Fame, like we've been talking about, in addition to having the jersey retired, it just reminded me that Kobe would obviously be there for Pau's jersey getting retired. But were I to guess and bet on it, Kobe would have been the one to induct Pau.
I think
into the Hall of Fame.
I think absolutely.
And
or certainly there's at the very least, for a jersey raising, for anything like that, there's no question.
But I imagine Pau would have chosen Kobe to induct him into the Hall, because you get inducted by fellow Hall of Famers.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine Kobe would have wanted to be the person to induct Pau. And it just becomes another reminder that he's not here. And that part of Laker history is not with us anymore.
Yeah. I don't think that's the reason they're doing it, but I do think it's an important part of the of the overall story. So very cool news.
Yeah.
Very excited the Lakers are doing that. More stuff that we want to get into that we didn't get a chance to in the documentary, the Legacy documentary on Hulu. So I guess we'll push some of that into next week, and there'll be a third episode that we can talk about dropping some point next week. I forget exactly when they're putting them up. But we got that stuff to look forward to. Keep sending us questions for the mailbag show on August 27th. You just saw Martin Hall win himself a Doer prize pack. We've got one more to give away next week before the show, and we'll be giving away more stuff at the show, 170 South La Brea on Saturday, August 27th at 11 a.m. Please come out and visit us if you can be part of that. Am I missing anything?
Nope.
All right. We'll see everybody. Have a great weekend.